3-year-old Eli Parker had always been quiet, eerily quiet. Not the kind of quiet that made people say, "Oh, he's such a calm kid." No. His silence carried weight. It was the silence of storms that never broke, the silence of a child who watched the world too closely and trusted it too little. For most parents, a toddler's voice fills a home with joyful chaos, tiny shouts, giggles, questions, the infinite curiosity of a small human. But for Danielle Parker, silence had become her constant companion. Silence and worry. She carried Eli up the courthouse steps that warm Georgia morning, shifting his weight on her hip as his arms wrapped around her neck like he was afraid she might disappear. His cheek pressed into her shoulder, soft and warm, but tense, always tense. "Almost done, baby," she whispered, brushing her lips against his hair. "Just a little meeting, then we go home." The boy didn't answer. He never answered. Only when something frightened him did he make a sound, and even then it was usually just a whimper, like he was scared of his own voice. Inside the courthouse, the air conditioning blasted cold currents against Danielle's skin, but sweat still formed along her hairline. She felt pulled apart, emotionally exhausted from months of custody meetings, juggling work, therapy appointments, court dates, and the crushing pressure of being judged by people who didn't know her life. Today wasn't even a confrontation hearing, just a procedural review, but the mere sight of a courtroom stole air from her lungs. She tightened her grip on Eli, inhaling the faint scent of baby shampoo in his hair, one of the only things that calmed her. Eli's tiny fingers suddenly curled into the fabric of her blouse, gripping hard. "What is it, honey?" she whispered. He didn't lift his head, but she felt him tremble. The hallway led to courtroom B, a bland door with peeling paint and a flickering overhead light that made everything feel a little haunted. As they approached, lawyers and clerks moved around them with weary expressions, stacks of files clutched to their chests like shields. Kids usually cried in courthouses, loud, frantic, overwhelmed. Not Eli. He was quiet but not peaceful. More like a rabbit sensing a fox. Danielle inhaled deeply. She adjusted Eli on her hip, pushed open the door, and stepped into a room heavy with tension. The faint smell of old wood, dust, and too many arguments lingered in the air. Wooden benches lined the room, scuffed from years of restless shoes. A bailiff stood like a statue near the judge's bench, eyes sharp despite his age. Attorney folders lay spread across tables like abandoned battle plans. Danielle tried to smile at the judge, Judge Monterey, a man known for his strict but fair demeanor. He gave her a small nod, then returned his focus to the papers before him. She took her seat at the left side of the room. Eli didn't look up. Not at the judge. Not at the attorneys. Not even at the scattered, colorful toys placed in the back corner for children, bright blocks and plush dolls that usually drew at least a glance from little ones. But not today. Something had him on edge. Danielle stroked his back softly. "You're safe, baby," she murmured, though she wasn't sure she believed it. The door behind them swung open again. And that's when Eli's head jerked up so suddenly Danielle flinched. His eyes, usually soft, vacant, or fixed on the floor, locked onto something across the room with sharp intensity. Like someone had flipped a switch inside him. Danielle followed his gaze. A police K-9 entered the courtroom beside his handler. He was huge, muscles rippling beneath glossy black fur, posture proud, the kind of dog that commanded instant respect. His amber eyes scanned the room with quiet intelligence. His name tag glinted under the fluorescent lights. Rex, K-9 Unit. The handler, a tall man with a square jaw and neatly pressed uniform, guided the dog forward with a firm grip on the leash. His presence was rigid, rehearsed, almost too careful, like he practiced looking trustworthy. Danielle had seen police dogs before. but something about Rex's entrance felt off. The dog's gaze swept the benches. When his amber eyes passed over Eli, something strange happened. Eli sat up straighter. His little hand rose. He pointed straight at the dog. Danielle froze. Her son didn't point. He never pointed. He rarely reacted to strangers at all. But now, his arm extended, finger trembling, a look of raw terror washing across his small face. Eli was reacting with an intensity Danielle had never seen. The handler noticed and gave a polite, confused smile, tugging Rex's leash gently. "Sorry, ma'am," he usually. But the handler never finished that sentence. Because Eli did something even more shocking. He spoke. His little voice, thin, wobbly from disuse, broke through the silent room like a dropped glass. "Doggy," he whispered. Danielle's heart seized. It wasn't the word itself. Eli had said doggy before, twice maybe, but the tone, fear mixed with something else, made her pulse spike. The judge raised his head. Even the bailiff looked up. Everyone heard him. Eli's hand still trembled in the air, finger locked toward Rex. The boy swallowed, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Then he whispered two more words. Two words that made the dog stiffen. Two words that silenced the handler. Two words that made Judge Monterey lean forward with alarm, suddenly fully alert. "Doggy mad." Danielle blinked, heart thudding. "Sweetheart, what did you say?" But Eli didn't answer her. He couldn't look away from the dog. Rex's ears twitched. His tail lowered. His muscles tightened slowly, almost imperceptibly. The handler tugged the leash again, forcing a nervous laugh. "He just doesn't like kids, maybe. Sorry about that." But his voice faltered. And for a split second, just a flicker, the handler's expression showed something Danielle had seen enough in life to recognize instinctively. Fear. Not fear of the boy. Fear of the dog. Or fear of what the dog was reacting to. Eli's small body pressed harder against Danielle, trembling now. But he spoke again, barely audible. "Doggy angry." His eyes didn't blink. It was like he wasn't just seeing the dog. He was feeling something radiating off of it. Something adults in the room were missing. Judge Monterey cleared his throat, leaning over the bench. "Officer," he said slowly, voice cool but firm, "is your dog agitated?" Rex gave a low, rumbling growl beneath his breath, directed straight at Eli. Not loud. Not performative. But visceral. The sound of a creature holding itself back. The handler stiffened. "He's fine, Your Honor, just overstimulated. Courtrooms can do that." But his hand tightened on the leash enough to turn his knuckles white. Danielle felt nausea creep up her throat. Something was wrong. Not courtroom wrong. Not paperwork wrong. Wrong. She stood halfway, clutching Eli protectively. "Maybe we should step outside." But she didn't finish. Because the handler shifted his stance. And something barely fell from his vest. A small metallic object. It hit the floor with a cold, piercing sound. Clink. Everyone's head turned. Rex's reaction was instant. The massive shepherd recoiled, stepping back sharply, almost tripping over his own paws. Eli whimpered like he'd been struck. The object rolled. And rolled. And rolled. Stopping near the dog's front paw. The bailiff frowned, bending to pick it up. "Sir, what is this?" The handler's face drained of color. "It's nothing," he stammered, "just medication." But the vial was unmarked. Cold. Heavy. Wrong. Judge Monterey stood so abruptly his chair slammed into the wall behind him. His voice cut through the tension like thunder. "Officer, approach the bench, now." The handler hesitated. Rex growled again. Eli buried his face in Danielle's shoulder, whispering a final, fragile word. Bad. Danielle froze. He'd never said that word before. Never. Judge Monterey's eyes narrowed, jaw tightening as he stared at the handler. Something inside him clicked. And then his voice boomed. Bailiff, secure that vial, and nobody leaves this courtroom. The handler's eyes darted toward the exit. Rex's muscles coiled, and the entire room held its breath. Just as the dog lunged, the courtroom seemed to shrink. Every chair, every dusty file, every fluorescent light buzzing overhead felt suddenly heavier, oppressive. Eli's tiny voice had pierced the walls like a shot, and the room had gone silent in response. Doggy mad, he had whispered. The words hung in the air. Danielle's heart raced. Her hands trembled as she instinctively tightened her grip on Eli's shoulders, pressing her face against the crown of his soft hair. She could feel the quick, shallow rhythm of his breathing, a fragile drum of fear that made her own pulse hammer in her chest. Mad, Judge Monterey repeated, voice calm but with an edge that could slice glass. Officer, his gaze, sharp and deliberate, fixed on the K9 handler. Is your dog mad? The handler, a tall, rigid man with perfectly combed hair and pressed uniform, swallowed audibly. He tugged on Rex's leash, and the dog's muscles tensed like coiled steel. No, Your Honor, he's just a little anxious. Crowds, new environments. That's all, the handler stammered, forcing a laugh that fell flat. He had sweat forming at his temples, and Danielle noticed for the first time just how pale he had gone. Rex, a black German shepherd with fur that gleamed like wet coal, didn't seem anxious in the way humans would understand it. His amber eyes locked onto Eli with a focus that was almost unnatural. The dog's body was rigid, not just tense, but alert, wary, defensive. Eli lifted his small head, trembling, and whispered again, barely audible over the sudden hush. Doggy scared. Every adult in the room froze. Even the judge's pen stopped mid-scribble. Scared. A police dog. Danielle's stomach knotted. She felt a chill crawl up her spine. She bent closer to Eli, whispering, "Sweetheart, what do you mean, scared?" But Eli's gaze never left Rex. His little finger remained pointed. His lips parted slightly, as if the words he wanted to say next were too dangerous to speak aloud. Judge Monterey's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Officer, step forward, now. The handler's hand tightened on the leash, knuckles white. He advanced, trying to force a confident stride, but Danielle noticed the subtle tremor in his knees. Rex growled, low, guttural, threatening, and yet restrained. Rex, the handler said, attempting to soothe him. Sit, good boy. The dog's growl deepened. Eli clung harder to Danielle's shoulder. Bad man, he whispered. The words didn't sound like a child's frightened babble. They sounded like a warning. The judge's eyes narrowed. I suggest you explain yourself, officer, now. The handler shifted uneasily, his gaze darting toward the exit, then back to Rex, then to the small boy whose finger still trembled in accusation. It's nothing, he said finally, voice cracking. Just some special training. He responds better to certain stimuli. Danielle felt her chest tighten. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. Something about the way he said it, the way Rex was reacting, felt wrong in a deep, primal way. Judge Monterey leaned forward, voice low but lethal. Special training on a police dog in a courtroom. The handler swallowed hard, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. Yes, Your Honor, just for obedience. He's very important for dangerous situations. Rex's ears flattened. His tail dropped to the floor. Every muscle in his massive frame coiled like a spring. Danielle could see the dog's body language as clearly as a neon sign. He was terrified of the handler. Eli whimpered and then whispered again. Doggy hurt. The courtroom held its collective breath. Judge Monterey's pen clattered onto the desk. The bailiff leaned forward, hand hovering near his radio. What did he say? Danielle shook her head. He doesn't usually speak like this, she said. He never labels feelings, never unless he senses danger. A sharp click sounded on the floor. Something metallic fell from the handler's vest. Everyone's eyes followed it. A small vial rolled across the tile, catching the overhead light. Rex recoiled, stepping back sharply. The handler bent down, face pale, to retrieve it, but Danielle could see Rex stiffen even more, muscles trembling with what could only be described as fear. Judge Monterey stood so fast that his chair scraped the floor. Bailiff, secure that object. Nobody leaves this room. The bailiff moved, his expression tense, but the handler's hand shot out, grabbing the vial. It's nothing, he stammered. Just medication for the dog. He needs it to calm down sometimes. Danielle's heart pounded. Something about the vial felt wrong. Cold, small, and dangerous. She couldn't explain it, but every instinct in her body screamed that this was not just medication. Judge Monterey's gaze was fixed, sharp as a hawk's. Medication, in a courtroom, explain yourself, officer. The handler's voice wavered. It's approved, department issued. Rex growled low again, warningly, this time not at Eli but at the handler. Danielle flinched. Eli, what did you see? She whispered. Eli buried his face into her shoulder, tiny hands clutching her tightly. Bad man, he repeated, his voice trembling. The words cut through the room like ice water. The judge's jaw tightened. Bailiff, detain him now, and someone keep the dog under control. The handler's eyes widened. Panic surged through him. Wait, no, he's mine, Rex's muscles tensed further. The dog's growl escalated to a snarl, teeth flashing. The K9 handler lunged for control, but Rex resisted, almost dragging him forward. Danielle clutched Eli. His small, trembling hands were buried against her chest. The boy's whispered words echoed through her mind, repeating over and over. Doggy hurt, bad man. The judge's voice cut sharply across the room. Officer, you are under arrest for endangering a K9 in your care. Stand down. The handler froze. For a moment, it seemed like he might flee. His eyes darted toward the back exit, but Rex's intense stare pinned him like a predator had cornered its prey. Danielle's pulse raced. She held Eli tight as the bailiff moved in. The handler's knees buckled under the pressure of authority, fear, and Rex's sheer presence. As they cuffed him, Rex's growl softened slightly, but his amber eyes never left the handler. The courtroom was silent except for Eli's soft, quivering breath. Judge Monterey slowly leaned back, adjusting his glasses. I want a full explanation, immediately, and someone get that vial to evidence, now. The bailiff carefully retrieved the small metallic object, placing it in an evidence bag. Danielle watched the vial glint under the courtroom lights, her stomach churning. Eli whispered one more time, barely audible. Doggy safe. Danielle brushed tears from her cheeks. Yes, baby, safe now, safe. But deep down, she knew something much larger was at play, something hidden, something that only Eli in his quiet, unassuming way seemed to sense. The judge's eyes were sharp, scanning the room. Everyone stay seated. Nobody moves until we get answers. Danielle squeezed Eli close. The boy's tiny hands were shaking in hers, but he no longer tried to speak. He was watching, waiting, sensing danger in a way no adult could understand. Rex, massive and alert, stayed by the handler's side, growling low, every muscle ready to spring into action. And Danielle realized, with a chilling clarity, her child, 3 years old, had just saved a life. But whose life? The handler, the dog, or maybe the courtroom? Because whatever Eli had sensed, it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The air in the room felt charged, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. And as the judge raised his hand to speak again, the small vial, the terrified handler, the massive black K9, and the quiet boy at Danielle's side all seemed to pulse with unspoken tension. Something bigger was coming. Something the courtroom wasn't ready for. And Eli, the boy who never spoke, seemed to know it. The courtroom air was thick with tension, almost heavy enough to choke. Every eye in the room tracked the handler, a man who had just gone from authority figure to accused, all while the massive black K9 Rex remained rigid at his side. Danielle tightened her hold on Eli. The boy's tiny hands trembled in hers, his cheek pressed against her chest. Even though he was silent now, his wide eyes, like dark amber mirrors, never left the dog. Judge Monterey's voice, cold and unwavering, cut through the room. "Officer, explain the vial immediately, and explain why your dog, your K9, is terrified of you." The handler's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward Rex, and for a brief moment Danielle saw a flash of something raw in him, fear. Not the fear of arrest or of the courtroom, it was a deeper, more personal fear. The kind that comes when someone knows they've crossed a line they can never uncross. "It's nothing, Your Honor, just standard K9 protocols," he said, his voice trembling. He tugged at Rex's leash. The dog resisted subtly, muscles tense as though aware the man was lying. Danielle's heart hammered. Something about the way Rex moved, hesitated, stiffened, recoiled, was different from normal canine behavior. This was instinct, pure and sharp. Rex knew something the humans couldn't see. Judge Monterey leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. "Protocols don't make a dog afraid of its handler in a courtroom. Are you telling me this vial is safe for him?" The handler faltered, his voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes, safe, yes, Your Honor." But Rex growled low in his throat, teeth visible, a warning that could chill the blood. The massive black dog wasn't just scared, he was angry. Eli lifted his head slightly. His small lips quivered, but his voice, soft, trembling, cut through the tension. "Doggy hurt." Danielle swallowed hard, a cold knot forming in her stomach. Eli never labeled emotions. He didn't speak often, and when he did, it was always with purpose. Did he just speak?" whispered one of the attorneys, his voice trembling. "Yes," Danielle said, almost automatically. "And he knows something's wrong." The judge's gaze hardened. "Officer, do not move. Bailiff, secure the vial, and someone please keep the dog under control." The handler's face drained of color. He glanced toward the exit, then back at Rex. The dog's amber eyes seemed to bore into his soul. Danielle could feel Eli shaking in her arms. She pressed her lips to the boy's hair. "It's okay, baby. You're safe. You're safe," she whispered, though neither of them truly felt it. The bailiff stepped forward, carefully reaching for the small metallic vial. The handler made a sudden lunge to grab it, panic flashing across his face. "No, that's mine. You don't understand. You don't know what it's for." Rex growled, low and dangerous, his body coiled like a spring. Danielle gasped as the dog shifted slightly, ready to pounce. The handler froze. Every muscle in his body screamed terror. Judge Monterey's voice cut like ice. "I suggest you remain calm, officer. Stand down, or I will hold you in contempt." The handler's eyes darted around, looking for allies. There were none. Every adult in the room was watching, tension rising like a storm cloud ready to burst. Rex barked suddenly, loud, sharp, and authoritative. The handler flinched. His face lost all color. Eli's small hand lifted again, trembling. He pointed directly at the handler, his voice barely above a whisper but clear enough for the judge to hear. "Bad man." The courtroom went completely silent. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Judge Monterey's eyes narrowed. "Bailiff, detain him immediately. Someone get this dog restrained properly. Now." Rex's growl intensified. The K9 officer tried to pull him back, but the dog resisted with a strength that shocked everyone in the room. The handler struggled to keep control, his face twisted in panic. Danielle held Eli close. His small fingers gripped her shirt tightly. "It's okay," she whispered. "You did good." Eli's lips quivered. "Doggy safe?" he asked, his voice barely audible. Danielle's throat tightened. She wanted to reassure him, to tell him everything would be fine, but deep down she knew they were only just scratching the surface of something far bigger. Judge Monterey stepped forward, voice sharp and commanding. "Officer, step away from the dog. Now, bailiff, secure him." The handler froze, then slowly released the leash. Rex's posture relaxed slightly, but the dog's eyes never left the man. Every instinct in Rex's body screamed that this man was dangerous. The bailiff moved quickly, placing handcuffs on the handler. The man's eyes darted toward the exit, then back at the dog. He seemed to realize something terrifying. Rex knew the truth. Danielle's heart pounded. Eli, trembling in her arms, whispered again. "Doggy scared, hurt." Judge Monterey's expression darkened. "What is in that vial?" he demanded. "I want a full explanation." The handler's hands shook violently. It's a stimulant for Rex, to make him more aggressive, more obedient for searches, arrests." His voice cracked, his eyes wild. I needed him. He's too nervous otherwise." The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Danielle clutched Eli tighter. The judge slammed his gavel. "Silence, continue, officer." The man's voice trembled. They were going to transfer him. They said he was unstable, but he wasn't unstable. He froze, his eyes flicking toward Rex. The massive dog's head was lowered, eyes locked on the handler with pure intelligence, understanding every word. "He knows," the handler whispered. "He knows what I did." Rex whined softly, almost mournfully. Eli shivered, burying his face in Danielle's chest. Judge Monterey leaned forward. "Knows what?" The handler's voice was barely audible. I have recordings, bodycam files. I deleted them from the system, but I kept copies. I didn't know what else to do." Danielle felt a chill creep down her spine. The idea of deleted recordings, hidden evidence, a terrified dog, and a child who could sense danger. It was almost too much to process. "Where are they?" the judge demanded. The handler hesitated. Sweat rolled down his face. Finally, he nodded toward his locker at the precinct. There are copies. I didn't know who else to trust." Judge Monterey's gavel pounded the bench. "Retrieve them, immediately." The bailiff and 2 officers moved quickly, leaving the courtroom tense with anticipation. Eli, still pressed against Danielle, whispered again. "Doggy safe." Danielle kissed his hair. "Yes, baby, safe for now." The seconds stretched, and then the deputies returned, carrying a small, unassuming hard drive sealed in an evidence bag. The judge inserted it into a laptop. The screen flickered to life. Video after video played, showing Rex under the handler's care. Harsh commands. Striking movements. Forced compliance under duress. Each clip showed Rex's resistance, his fear, his frustration. Danielle's hand shook. Eli whimpered softly. But then came the last video, time-stamped only 3 weeks earlier. Rex was cornered in a small, dimly lit storage room, whimpering softly. Someone else's voice entered the frame deep, commanding, unyielding. "You keep him obedient. We can't afford a soft dog on this task force." The handler's voice, trembling, replied. "He's not soft, he's scared. This isn't right." "Do it," the other voice ordered. Judge Monterey froze. He recognized that voice immediately. Eli lifted his head from Danielle's shoulder, eyes wide. He whispered 2 words that made the entire room hold its breath. "Bad boss." Danielle's heart lurched. She glanced at the judge. His face was pale, frozen. And in the hallway just outside the double doors, footsteps approached. Heavy, confident, familiar. The man from the video was walking toward them. The metallic vial sat on the courtroom floor, small and unassuming, yet it radiated a presence that made every adult in the room pause. Light from the fluorescent bulbs danced off its smooth surface, giving it an almost sinister gleam. Rex, the massive black German shepherd, had frozen in place, tail lowered, body coiled as if ready to strike. The growl in his throat was low, guttural, barely restrained, but enough to send shivers down Danielle's spine. Eli pressed his face into Danielle's shoulder, trembling violently. He whispered again, his tiny voice quivering. "Doggy hurt." Danielle's hands shook as she clutched him tighter. Her heart hammered so loudly she feared everyone in the room could hear it. Judge Monterey stood abruptly, the sound of his chair scraping against the floor echoing through the courtroom. "Bailiff," he commanded, voice sharp, "secure the vial immediately. Nobody leaves this room until I get answers." The bailiff moved swiftly, crouching to retrieve the object. Danielle could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers hovered over the vial like it was a ticking bomb. The handler, still pale and shaking, reached out instinctively, but Rex stiffened and stepped protectively toward the officer. "No, that's mine. You don't understand," the handler yelled. His voice cracked, exposing a vulnerability he clearly had never intended anyone to see. Rex growled louder, low and menacing. The handler froze mid-step, his knuckles white on the leash. He looked at the dog, and for a brief, terrifying moment, Danielle thought Rex might attack him. The judge's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Stand down, officer, or you will be held in contempt." The handler's knees trembled. He released the leash, his hands shaking violently. Every instinct in Rex's massive body screamed, "This man is dangerous." Danielle's pulse raced. She could feel Eli trembling against her chest. The boy's whispered words echoed again. "Bad man." Judge Monterey's gaze hardened. He leaned forward, voice icy. "Officer, explain the vial, now, and explain why your K9 is terrified of you." The handler's lips quivered. He swallowed audibly as if struggling to find words he'd never had to use outside of silence. It's a stimulant," he stammered, "for Rex, to make him more aggressive, more obedient, for searches, arrests." Danielle's stomach twisted into knots. Every instinct screamed that something was deeply, horribly wrong. The courtroom murmured. Officers exchanged uneasy glances. Even the judge's pen dropped onto the desk. "Did you harm this dog?" Judge Monterey asked, voice low but deadly. The handler hesitated, his face turned an ashen gray. I've followed orders," his voice cracked, a mixture of fear and shame, "but I didn't know the extent." Rex's ears twitched. The dog shifted, muscles still coiled, eyes locked on the man like he was reading his soul. Danielle shivered. Eli had never reacted like this to anyone before, yet here he was, pointing, whispering, trembling, but somehow understanding. The judge slammed the gavel. "Silence! Bailiff, restrain him, and someone take control of the dog immediately." The bailiff approached cautiously, hand extended. Rex growled, baring teeth in a warning display. The handler paled further, realizing that no amount of control would stop the dog from reacting if it chose to. Danielle held Eli closer. The boy's tiny hands gripped her shirt. She pressed her lips to his hair. "It's okay, baby. You did good." Eli's small voice trembled. "Doggy safe." Danielle swallowed. "For now, baby, for now." The bailiff finally managed to secure the vial in an evidence bag. He held it up, light reflecting off the smooth metal. The courtroom held its breath, every eye fixed on that small object that had become the center of the storm. Judge Monterey's eyes narrowed. "Officer, you are under arrest for endangering a K9 in your care. Step forward and do not resist." The handler's face contorted with panic. He looked toward the exit, calculating his options, but Rex's piercing gaze held him in place. The dog's growl deepened. resonating through the room. Eli's small hand lifted again, trembling, his finger pointing directly at the handler. "Bad man," he repeated. The judge's voice cut through the tense air. "Bailiff, cuff him, and someone, for God's sake, keep that dog under control." The handler struggled against the cuffs, panic overtaking reason. He tried to speak, but Rex's low, menacing growl stopped him mid-word. The massive dog's presence dominated the room, every muscle taut, every instinct on edge. Danielle pressed her lips to Eli's hair, whispering reassurances she barely believed. "It's okay, baby. You're safe." Judge Monterey's eyes narrowed as he addressed the courtroom. "Everyone remain seated. Nobody leaves. We are not finished here." The tension was almost unbearable. Officers exchanged nervous glances. Danielle could feel Eli trembling against her chest. The boy's whispered words echoed in her mind, repeating like a warning. "Doggy hurt, bad man." The judge's gaze hardened. "We need answers now. Officer, tell us who gave you the orders." The handler's hands shook violently. I have recordings, bodycam files. I deleted them from the system, but I kept copies. I didn't know what else to do." Danielle felt a chill run down her spine. Deleted recordings, hidden evidence, a terrified dog, and a child who could sense danger. It was almost too much to comprehend. "Where are they?" Judge Monterey demanded. The handler nodded toward his locker at the precinct. There are copies. I didn't know who else to trust." The judge's gavel slammed down. "Retrieve them immediately." Two deputies moved quickly, leaving the courtroom tense with anticipation. Eli, pressed against Danielle, whispered again. "Doggy safe." Danielle kissed his hair. "Yes, baby, safe for now." The seconds dragged. Then the deputies returned, carrying a small hard drive sealed in an evidence bag. The judge inserted it into a laptop. The screen flickered to life. Video after video played, revealing Rex under the handler's care. Harsh commands. Strikes to the dog's body. Forced obedience under duress. Each clip was worse than the last. Danielle's hands shook. Eli whimpered softly. But then came the final video, time-stamped only 3 weeks earlier. Rex was cornered in a small storage room, whimpering softly. Someone else's voice, deep, commanding, unyielding, entered the frame. "You keep him obedient. We can't afford a soft dog on this task force." The handler's trembling voice replied, "He's not soft, he's scared. This isn't right." "Do it," the other voice ordered. Judge Monterey froze. He recognized it immediately. Eli lifted his head from Danielle's shoulder, eyes wide. He whispered 2 words that made the entire room hold its breath. "Bad boss." Danielle's heart lurched. She glanced at the judge. His face was pale, frozen. And then the double doors at the back of the courtroom creaked open. Heavy footsteps approached, confident, familiar. The man from the video was walking toward them. Every person in the courtroom went rigid. The air seemed to hold its breath. Rex's growl deepened. Eli pressed himself closer to Danielle, whispering again. "Bad man." The doors slowly opened wider. And there he was, Captain Hayes, the precinct captain, the voice from the video. His eyes scanned the room, landing on the paused footage, on Rex, on the judge, and on Eli, who now, 3 years old, had seen more than most adults ever would. Captain Hayes's lips parted to speak, but Judge Monterey's voice stopped him. "Captain Hayes, do not move." The room held a deadly silence. Everyone waited. Even Rex's low growl seemed to hang, anticipating. Hayes's hand twitched toward the door, then froze. His expression changed. A flash of recognition, of fear, crossed his face. Danielle held Eli tight. His small voice trembled but carried across her chest. "Safe." The judge didn't answer. He simply stared at Captain Hayes, his voice low but unyielding. This case just changed everything. And the room waited. The courtroom held its breath. Captain Hayes stood at the double doors, flanked by two uniformed officers. His hands were slightly raised, defensive, but his eyes, cold, calculating, scanned the room, stopping briefly at the paused video on the laptop. Rex, the massive German shepherd, growled low, every muscle in his body taut and ready. The dog's amber eyes never left Hayes. Judge Monterey leaned over the bench, voice sharp and unflinching. "Captain Hayes, step inside, now." Hayes froze. For a heartbeat, time seemed suspended. The room waited. Even the fluorescent lights above flickered unnoticed. Then slowly Hayes stepped into the courtroom. His polished shoes clicked against the tile floor, a deliberate, confident rhythm. But Danielle noticed something, a subtle tremor in his hands, a hesitation in his posture. He was not as composed as he wanted everyone to think. The judge's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Captain Hayes, you are aware that these videos show a K9 under duress and a handler in fear. Do you wish to explain yourself?" Hayes's eyes flicked toward Rex, who now stepped forward slightly, growling, almost daring him to speak. Eli, pressed against Danielle's chest, whispered again. "Doggy mad." Danielle's hands tightened on her son. The boy's words were fragments, but each one carried weight far beyond his years. Everyone in the courtroom instinctively leaned in, waiting to hear the truth. Hayes opened his mouth, then closed it. A bead of sweat ran down his temple. The officers standing beside him glanced at each other nervously. Judge Monterey slammed his gavel. "Answer now." Finally Hayes spoke, voice controlled but icy. I didn't want this to come out, but the truth is more complicated than you understand." Danielle felt a chill crawl up her spine. She had sensed it all along, something far larger than a single misused dog, a single frightened child. "Complicated?" the judge asked, his eyes narrowing. "Captain, you endangered a K9, subjected him to unethical treatment, and encouraged a handler to lie. Explain yourself." Hayes's jaw tightened. "Rex is one of the most valuable dogs in the entire state. He's trained for high-risk operations, national-level security assignments, operations you don't even want to know about." The courtroom murmured. Danielle felt Eli stiffen in her arms. The boy's instinct, his silent understanding, seemed to grow sharper. Judge Monterey leaned forward. "We're not here to hear excuses about security operations. We're here to determine why a child, this child, was able to sense danger where trained officers could not." Eli whispered again, trembling. "Doggy hurt." Danielle swallowed hard. "Yes, baby, he was hurt, but it's okay now. We'll fix it." Hayes's eyes flicked toward Eli. For a brief second, a flicker of fear passed over his face. His voice hardened. "I did what I thought necessary. The dog he needed to be aggressive, for the good of the department, for the missions, for the arrests." Rex growled, low and threatening, his teeth flashing. Danielle pressed Eli closer. The boy's small hand lifted slightly, trembling, pointing at the massive dog. "Safe," he whispered again. Hayes's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what's at stake here. This dog, he's more than just a K9. He's a weapon trained for situations humans can't survive. If he's not obedient, if he's soft." The judge's voice cut through the room. "Soft? You put a child, a 3-year-old, in this courtroom with a terrified dog and you call it training." Hayes's voice dropped, a hiss of frustration. He knew, the boy knew before anyone else. The child pointed him out, warned everyone. He saw what I couldn't hide, and now it's all unraveling. Danielle's stomach twisted. Eli had pointed. He had whispered. He had sensed danger that no one else had noticed. The child's instincts had not only saved Rex but exposed secrets that could ruin careers. Judge Monterey slammed his gavel, demanding order. "Officer, Captain, speak clearly. What exactly are you admitting to?" Hayes's shoulders slumped slightly, defeated. I forced Rex to take stimulants. I pushed him beyond his limits, beyond what's ethical, to make him more aggressive for field operations. I pressured the handler to lie, to hide the truth. I thought it was necessary, but the dog, he knew, and the boy knew. Danielle's hand shook. Eli's small voice, barely audible, repeated, "Bad man." The judge leaned back, jaw tight, eyes narrowing at Hayes. "Captain Hayes, you endangered an animal, encouraged a subordinate to break the law, and misled this court. Do you understand the severity of your actions?" Hayes nodded slowly. Yes, I understand now, too late, but I did what I thought was right at the time." Rex barked suddenly, a sharp, commanding sound that made everyone jump. The dog's body was coiled like a spring, every muscle taut, eyes locked on Hayes as if to say, "No more lies, no more abuse." Eli shivered in Danielle's arms, whispering, "Doggy mad." Danielle's throat tightened. The boy's perception, so intuitive, so raw, was more accurate than any officer, more reliable than any investigation. Eli knew the danger in a way adults could not. The judge's voice was cold, unwavering. "Bailiff, restrain Captain Hayes. He is now in contempt of court for endangering a K-9 and obstructing justice." Hayes's eyes widened. Panic surged across his face. He tried to resist, but Rex's low growl and the presence of the courtroom officers kept him in place. Danielle held Eli close. Her chest heaved. The boy's small hand lifted slightly, trembling, pointing at Rex. "Safe," he whispered. "Yes, baby," Danielle said. "Safe now, you helped." The courtroom remained tense. Every adult's gaze shifted between the restrained Hayes, the laptop showing the incriminating videos, and the massive, alert K-9 who had sensed the danger before anyone else. Judge Monterey removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes, visibly shaken. This changes everything. The videos, the testimony, the child's perception. This is no longer just a procedural matter. This is a systemic failure, and someone must be held accountable. Eli's small fingers trembled as he pressed into Danielle's chest. The boy had saved a dog, exposed a lie, and revealed the hidden corruption of an entire precinct. And now the courtroom waited for what came next. Because the final piece, the recordings, the hidden orders, the unseen authority, had only just begun to surface. Rex shifted slightly, amber eyes scanning the room, aware that the danger was not over. Danielle hugged Eli tightly. She whispered softly, "You did this, baby. You helped stop him." Eli's small voice, barely audible, whispered once more, "Safe for now." But even as he said it, the heavy footsteps outside the courtroom hinted that someone far more dangerous than Hayes was still in the wings, watching, waiting. The courtroom was silent except for the soft hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Every eye was on the laptop screen, which now played the incriminating footage captured by the K-9 handler, the same footage that had been deleted from the official system and hidden away by the man now in handcuffs. Danielle held Eli close. His tiny hands trembled against her chest. He pressed his cheek against her shoulder, and his whispered words seemed to echo in the tension-filled air. "Doggy hurt." She swallowed hard. "Yes, baby, he's safe now," she whispered, though the unease in her chest betrayed her words. Judge Monterey's expression was grim. He adjusted his glasses and leaned toward the laptop, scrutinizing each frame. Rex, the massive black German shepherd, stayed alert at the handler's side, growling softly as though warning the courtroom that the danger wasn't over. The bailiff motioned to the deputies who had retrieved the hard drive from the precinct locker. They stepped forward and opened the evidence bag carefully. Inside lay a small, unassuming hard drive, its metallic surface catching the light like a hidden weapon. Judge Monterey's voice was low but commanding. "Play the next file." The deputies complied. The next video began to play, showing Rex confined in a dimly lit storage room. The camera was stationary, capturing the massive dog whimpering softly as the handler, visibly distressed, attempted to administer a stimulant through a small, metallic vial, the same one that had rolled across the courtroom floor earlier. Then the camera panned subtly. Another set of footsteps approached the dog. The handler's voice, trembling, spoke quietly. "He's not soft, he's scared I can't." Another voice cut in, deep and commanding. "Do it. He must obey. We can't afford weakness in this unit." Danielle's stomach twisted. The voice was familiar to her, not just familiar but authoritative, the kind that could make even a seasoned officer falter. The judge's eyes widened slightly as he leaned closer to the screen. "Pause it," he commanded. The video froze. The voice that had issued the orders belonged to Captain Hayes. Danielle stiffened. She had suspected his involvement, but seeing it played so clearly, alongside Rex's obvious distress and Eli's intuitive warnings, made the reality impossible to ignore. Eli lifted his head slightly from Danielle's shoulder, amber eyes wide. He whispered two words that reverberated through the courtroom like a warning. "Bad boss." Rex's ears twitched. The massive dog's muscles tensed again. Even restrained, his instincts flared, as though sensing that the man who had given those orders was still present, still dangerous. Judge Monterey swallowed hard. He adjusted his glasses and addressed the bailiff. "Ensure the dog is secure, but do not let anyone remove him from this courtroom until we get answers." Danielle's fingers gripped Eli tightly. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "You helped, you saved him." Eli's small hands pressed harder against her chest. "Doggy safe?" he asked, trembling. "For now," Danielle said. The video continued. In it, the handler attempted to calm Rex, whispering soothing words while the dog's eyes darted toward the storage room door. The deep voice returned. "If he disobeys, he's worthless. He must obey. No excuses." Danielle's eyes widened. She realized the implications. This wasn't just about one dog, one handler, one child. It was systemic. Someone at the top of the chain of command was orchestrating these abuses. Judge Monterey's gavel pounded the desk. "Play the next recording." The video showed Rex being coaxed into obedience after being administered the stimulant. The dog's eyes were glassy, his movements robotic. But the camera captured something else, a faint reflection in a mirror on the wall. A tall figure in uniform watched silently, arms crossed, assessing the situation with cold calculation. Danielle's stomach dropped. She recognized the silhouette immediately. It was Hayes. It was someone higher, someone who had remained in the shadows until now. The judge leaned forward, voice tense. "Who is that?" The handler, still restrained nearby, trembled violently. I don't know his name," he whispered. He comes in sometimes, observes, orders, instructions, I don't know." Rex shifted slightly, growling low. The dog's amber eyes were fixed on the entrance of the courtroom, on something, or someone, beyond Danielle's view. Eli lifted his tiny head, eyes scanning the room with a focus that belied his age. "Bad boss coming," he whispered. The judge froze, recognizing the weight of the words. He had a sinking feeling that the hidden authority in the video was more than a mere supervisor. It was a figure with real power, capable of silencing anyone who knew too much. Danielle swallowed hard. Her chest tightened. Eli's instincts, always sharper than her own, had never been wrong before. And now, for the first time, the fear in her child's voice carried the weight of prophecy. The bailiff glanced nervously toward the hallway. "Your Honor, footsteps," he whispered. Heavy, deliberate footsteps approached. Rex stiffened, growling in warning. Every muscle in the massive dog's body coiled, ready to defend. Danielle held Eli tighter, his small hands pressed against her chest. "Safe," he whispered. "For now," she replied, though even she wasn't sure. The double doors creaked open slowly. A tall figure in uniform stepped into the courtroom, commanding the attention of everyone present. The officers flanking him stiffened instantly. It was the man from the videos, the hidden authority, the one whose orders had driven Rex into fear, who had forced the handler to lie, who had orchestrated the abuse from the shadows. Judge Monterey's voice was sharp, unwavering. "Do not move." The man's eyes scanned the courtroom, landing first on the laptop showing the incriminating footage, then on Rex, and finally on Eli, who, despite being 3 years old, seemed to see through the layers of power and deception. Danielle's throat tightened. She pressed Eli's head to her chest. "It's okay, you helped. You helped everyone," she whispered. Eli's small voice trembled. "Doggy mad." The courtroom waited, frozen. The judge, the officers, even Captain Hayes, now restrained, watched as the hidden authority stepped closer, unaware that every eye, every instinct, every ounce of truth was aligned against him. Rex growled again, low and deliberate. Eli's hand lifted slightly, pointing at the massive dog. "Safe," he whispered. Danielle kissed his hair. "Yes, baby, safe for now." But in that instant, the room collectively understood. The real danger had only just entered. The hidden authority had stepped into the courtroom. He had seen the videos, the dog, the child, and he knew that everything, his secrets, his control, his deception, was about to be exposed. Judge Monterey's voice cut through the tension. "We are not finished, and this ends today." Rex's growl deepened, echoing in the silent room. Eli trembled but held firm, intuition guiding him. The hidden authority's eyes narrowed. For the first time, someone or something challenged his power. And he did not like it. The courtroom was electric with tension. Every eye was fixed on the imposing figure standing just inside the doors, the hidden authority, the one whose voice had driven Rex into fear, whose orders had forced the handler to lie, and whose power now loomed over everyone in the room. Rex growled low, a rumble vibrating through his massive chest, every muscle coiled and alert. His amber eyes locked on the man, reading him with the clarity only a K9 could achieve after years of training and instinct. Eli, pressed against Danielle's chest, whispered again, small voice trembling but unwavering. "Bad man." Danielle swallowed hard. Her chest tightened, but she held Eli close. "It's okay, baby. You helped. You helped everyone." The judge's gavel slammed, demanding order. "Step forward and identify yourself. Now, no one leaves this room until you explain your actions." The man's eyes flicked toward the laptop displaying the incriminating videos. He froze, realizing the gravity of what was happening. The recordings showed him orchestrating Rex's fear, manipulating the handler and issuing commands that were unethical, illegal, and dangerous. His face tightened, lips pressed into a thin line. I, he began, voice low and controlled, but his hands betrayed him, trembling slightly, betraying the calm facade he tried to maintain. "You don't understand the stakes. The operations, the stakes are higher than you know." Judge Monterey's eyes narrowed, voice cold and deliberate. "The stakes do not excuse abuse. You endangered a K9, manipulated an officer, and put a child at risk. Explain yourself now." Rex shifted, growling with increasing intensity. The dog's presence filled the room, commanding attention, signaling that this was no ordinary confrontation. Every officer, every attorney, every adult in the courtroom felt the weight of his vigilance. Eli lifted his head slightly, amber eyes scanning the hidden authority. "Doggy mad," he whispered. Danielle's throat tightened. The boy's intuition had never been wrong, and now, once again, it was guiding them all. The man's gaze darted toward Rex. The dog's growl deepened, and for the first time he hesitated, uncertainty flashing across his face. He had always wielded control with absolute certainty, but here, in the presence of a child who could see the truth and a dog who could sense danger, his authority faltered. I was following orders," he said finally, voice trembling. "I had to ensure compliance. The dog, he is trained for critical missions. He cannot fail. I did what I thought was necessary." Danielle pressed Eli's head against her chest. "It's okay, baby," she whispered. "You're helping, you're keeping him safe." Judge Monterey leaned forward, voice sharp as steel. "Compliance does not justify abuse. You endangered a life, human and animal alike. Now you will answer for it." The man's eyes darted toward the back doors, calculating, assessing escape routes. But Rex's body tensed, muscles coiled like springs. The dog's growl was low, menacing, and deliberate, a warning. No movement without consequence. Eli's small hand lifted, trembling but pointed. "Bad boss," he whispered. The courtroom seemed to shudder at the boy's words. Danielle's pulse raced. The phrase carried more weight than any adult testimony could. It was instinct, intuition, clarity distilled into two simple words. The hidden authority's lips tightened. He looked around, realizing that the entire courtroom was aligned against him. The judge, the officers, the restrained handler, the K-9, and even the child. Every instinct in Rex's body screamed the same truth that Eli had whispered. This man was dangerous, untrustworthy, and guilty. Judge Monterey's voice cut through the tension. "Bailiff, secure the suspect immediately. No one interferes. This ends now." The bailiff stepped forward cautiously. The man tried to resist, a last desperate attempt to assert control. But Rex's growl rose in volume, the sound vibrating through the floor and walls, a visceral warning. The dog moved subtly, positioning himself between the man and anyone else in the room. Eli's tiny voice broke the tense silence again. "Doggy safe." Danielle kissed his hair. "Yes, baby, safe for now." The man's eyes widened as he realized his authority had evaporated. The evidence on the laptop, the handler's testimony, and the silent, unerring instincts of a 3-year-old had combined to corner him completely. Rex shifted again, growling low, muscles coiled. The dog's eyes, bright and intelligent, locked on the man as if communicating a simple message: "Do not move." The hidden authority faltered. His jaw tightened, hands trembling. For the first time, he was not in control. Judge Monterey's gavel slammed, demanding silence. "Officer Captain, your actions have consequences. The law applies to everyone, and today you will answer for them." The restrained handler shuddered, tears welling in his eyes. I didn't know what else to do," he whispered. He forced me to lie. I was scared for Rex, for myself." Danielle's chest ached. Eli's small body trembled, yet he remained alert, watching, sensing. He understood the danger in ways adults couldn't. Judge Monterey's gaze returned to the hidden authority. "You will be held accountable for every order, every action, every violation of trust. The K-9's welfare, the handler's safety, and this child's life were all jeopardized by your decisions." Rex's growl softened slightly but remained vigilant. The dog's body language, tense yet protective, mirrored the courtroom's focus. A creature trained for obedience, now fully aware of injustice. The man's lips parted, voice quivering. I only followed protocol. Judge Monterey cut him off. "Protocol does not excuse abuse. Obedience does not excuse terror. You endangered lives, and now the law will decide your fate." Danielle held Eli tightly. The boy's small hands pressed against her chest, amber eyes locked on Rex. His whispered words echoed again. "Doggy mad." Danielle shivered. His instincts, untrained but perfect, had guided them this far. Now, with the hidden authority exposed and cornered, the truth was out. The courtroom waited. Every adult, every officer, every eye in the room was on the massive black K-9, the child, and the man whose power had been shattered. The tension was palpable, every second stretching like a taut wire ready to snap. Eli's small voice, barely audible but clear, whispered once more. "Safe for now." But even as he spoke, Danielle knew the danger wasn't over. The man in front of them had been exposed, yes, but he was still human, dangerous, calculating, capable of anything to regain control. Rex's amber eyes locked on the hidden authority. The massive dog shifted slightly, growled low and warning. Eli trembled but stayed alert, instincts guiding him. Judge Monterey's voice, cold and unwavering, rang out. "Bailiff, remove him. This courtroom is under order and no one else will be harmed. This ends today." As the officers moved to detain him, the man's face twisted in a mixture of fear, anger, and desperation. Rex's growl followed him every step, a living barrier between the danger he posed and the innocent lives in the room. Danielle pressed Eli close. "It's over, baby," she whispered. Eli's small hands tightened, eyes wide. "Safe." "For now," Danielle replied. But even as the hidden authority was led away, the sense of impending danger lingered. There were still secrets, still unseen forces, and still lives hanging in the balance. And Eli, the boy who saw truth in ways adults could not, knew it. The courtroom felt smaller than ever. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum. Every eye was fixed on Eli, pressed against Danielle's chest, amber eyes wide and unblinking. Across from him, the massive black German shepherd Rex stood like a sentinel, muscles coiled, growling low but controlled, a silent warning to anyone who dared misstep. Captain Hayes had been restrained, led toward the exit by the bailiffs, his face pale and twisted with a mixture of fear and fury. But the tension in the room wasn't over. There was one final element, the hidden authority from the video, the man who had orchestrated Rex's abuse, ordered the handler to lie, and attempted to manipulate the system from the shadows. Judge Monterey's gaze swept the room. He had witnessed fear, manipulation, and now instinctual truth, all converging in a single, impossible moment. He adjusted his glasses, gripping the edge of the bench as if holding the courtroom together with his bare hands. "Now," he said slowly, voice deliberate, "we need a clear account of the remaining evidence. Officer, handler, let's begin." The restrained handler's lips quivered. "Your Honor, I kept the recordings. Every order, every stimulant, every incident with Rex, everything was documented. But the last one, the last file, it wasn't meant for anyone to see." Danielle stiffened, instinctively holding Eli tighter. The boy's small hands trembled against her chest. His whispered words barely rose above a sigh. "Doggy hurt." Judge Monterey leaned forward. "Explain." The handler swallowed hard. "It was a backup file, the one I didn't delete. I thought maybe someone would see the truth if I kept it safe, but I didn't expect it to reveal what it did." The judge's gaze sharpened. "And what exactly did it reveal?" The handler took a deep breath, trembling. "It shows the orders came from higher than Hayes, someone with authority over the entire precinct, over operations, over the chain of command. They planned to cover everything up if anyone found out. And in Rex, he sensed it. The dog, he reacted to danger before anyone else could." Danielle's chest tightened. Eli pressed closer, whispering again. "Bad boss." Judge Monterey froze. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. He glanced at the video, then back at Eli. The child's voice, 3 years old, had nailed it. "Eli," the judge asked cautiously, did you see what happened?" The boy nodded slightly, amber eyes fixed on the K9. "Doggy mad bad man." Silence filled the courtroom. Every adult froze, realizing the gravity of the statement. A 3-year-old had identified danger where trained officers and supervisors could not. The judge's hand hovered over his gavel. He turned slowly toward the laptop. "Show the final recording." The room darkened slightly as the video played. Rex was cornered in a storage room, growling softly as the handler administered a stimulant. Then the deep, commanding voice of the hidden authority issued orders. "You will obey, no excuses, we cannot afford weakness." The handler's trembling voice followed. "He's scared, he's not soft, I." A sudden flash on the screen revealed something no one expected, a reflection in the storage room mirror. A tall figure, in full uniform, observed silently. The camera captured the man's subtle movements as he gave hand signals to the handler, ensuring compliance without physically intervening. Danielle's chest tightened. She knew instinctively who it was, the ultimate orchestrator, the one whose presence had haunted Rex's every move. Judge Monterey's eyes widened as he froze mid-sentence. "My God," he muttered, his hand gripping the edge of the bench. That's... Eli whispered, eyes wide, "Safe for now." Danielle pressed her lips to his hair. "Yes, baby, safe." The judge's voice shook slightly as he composed himself. "Ladies and gentlemen, the man in that reflection is the deputy chief of the precinct. He's been directing operations behind the scenes, manipulating subordinates, using the K-9 unit for enforcement experiments no one authorized." Gasps filled the courtroom. Officers shifted uneasily, whispers spreading like wildfire. Captain Hayes, still restrained, muttered, I didn't know, I only followed orders." Rex growled low, warning, eyes fixed on the empty doorway where the deputy chief should have been. The dog's instincts were unmistakable. The danger was far from over. Judge Monterey's hand shook slightly as he raised his gavel. This is unprecedented. We have a child who identified danger, a K-9 who sensed it, and multiple officers now implicated. The law, the ethics of our profession, all demand accountability. Danielle's chest ached. Eli's instincts had never been wrong. The boy had pointed, warned, and now the final truth was revealed. Rex shifted slightly, growl subsiding, muscles still tense but controlled. The dog's amber eyes scanned the courtroom, aware that justice and danger had converged here today. Judge Monterey's voice was unwavering, though tinged with disbelief. "Bailiff, secure all evidence. Officer, bring Rex closer. This child's observations must be recorded in full. Every word, every gesture, every instinct has proven accurate and essential to this case." Danielle held Eli closer. The boy's small hands pressed against her chest. His voice, soft but firm, whispered, "Doggy safe." "Yes, baby," Danielle said, "safe now." The judge paused, scanning the room. "And the deputy chief, he will be summoned immediately. His orders, his directives, his presence in the videos, they will be exposed. No one will interfere, no one will cover up. Justice will be served." Captain Hayes, restrained, slumped in his chair. I didn't know, I only followed." Rex barked suddenly, short and commanding, as if to punctuate the statement. Every officer and adult in the room felt the weight of the dog's presence. Eli's small hand lifted, trembling, pointing at Rex. "Safe," he whispered. "Yes, baby," Danielle said. "Safe because of you." The judge's gavel pounded, echoing through the courtroom. "All rise." Rex shifted, growling softly, muscles relaxed but alert. Eli's amber eyes scanned the room one last time, intuition confirming the danger was neutralized, for now. The deputy chief's footsteps echoed from the hallway, growing louder, approaching the doors. The courtroom held its breath. The man whose orders had corrupted the unit, endangered lives, and driven Rex into fear was about to face the consequences of his actions. Danielle hugged Eli tightly. "You helped save everyone, baby, you and Doggy." Eli's small voice trembled, yet there was clarity in it. "Safe for now." The doors opened. Justice, truth, instinct, and courage converged in that single charged moment. And the courtroom, once a place of fear, tension, and hidden threats, now stood on the brink of revelation, ready to expose corruption, protect the innocent, and honor the instincts of a 3-year-old who had seen more than any adult ever could. The judge leaned forward, amber eyes scanning the room. Every officer, every adult, every restrained individual knew. The final confrontation was about to begin. And this time, there would be no escape. The end.